everyone, Lori Lauritsen here, licensed mental health counselor, master certified addictions professional, certified yoga teacher with LL Counseling Wellness, addiction, yoga therapy, and trauma therapy. And here to talk to you a little bit about making decisions and understanding your substance use. This is part of my addiction series where I share some of the tools and the teachings that I do in groups with my individual clients as a way for you to get an idea of, what some of these things are for you, just some basic education, or maybe not basic education for you, and also an opportunity to see what it might be like to work with me. So today we're going to talk about the Payoff Matrix or decisional balance. And I'm going to show you a visual of what that is. But basically what that means is, what are the payoffs? What are the things that my addiction to alcohol, substances, whatever the case may be, what does it do for me? What are some of the consequences, both positive and negative? And what are the things that might get in the way of me staying sober? So we're going to look at this one that I've kind of filled out just based on what I've had clients say to me. Some of it may be a little bit different for you, and that's okay. So as these things show up, we'll talk about how you can do that for yourself. Either you can reach out to me for the worksheet, or you can just write it in your own little notebook as you watch this video. Okay. First thing we're going to look at is the positive consequences, but let's look at this overall, the positive consequences and the negative consequences of using substances versus not using substances. Now, you can insert your own substance here, alcohol, drugs, whatever the case may be. This also works for other changes you might want to make, but just for simplistic purposes, we're going to keep with drugs and alcohol here. Okay, so let's look first at what are the positive consequences? What's good about using? I know that seems like a strange question to ask, especially if you're trying to stay sober, but it's a really important one, because we want to look at where we are in order to figure out where we're going. We want to look at what purpose does this serve for me? Because if it didn't serve a purpose, you wouldn't do it. Okay. So what are some of those positive consequences for you of using your substance of choice? Maybe it feels good. Maybe you enjoy the high. I mean, let's be real and be honest and authentic with ourselves, because the more we do that, the more opportunity we have for change. It helps with my anxiety. It numbs my feelings. Right? That's a big one for a lot of clients. Numbing their feelings, helping with depression. I don't have to think about my trauma when I'm using, right? So those are really important things to recognize, because that tells you where some healing needs to happen. So what might some of those other things be for you? It could be a habit, at this point. And so that's important to take a look at too. And this is a good place to talk about the quick brain model, right? I've talked about this in a few of my other videos. So if you haven't seen those, definitely go back and watch it. But this is where those two parts of the brain come in, the lower brain or the limbic system, and the higher brain or the thinking part of the brain that says, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Or this doesn't feel good. So when we use on a regular basis, the lower brain thinks that we need drugs or alcohol to survive, because it creates this cycle of stimulating those feel-good or chemicals, those feel-good neurotransmitters, and then dropping them dramatically when we stop, which is where tolerance and withdrawal comes in. That's why you need more and more to achieve the same effect. So and when that happens, it blows the lid off that thinking brain, so that it's just automatic. It's just instinctual, right? I need this. I have to have it, whatever the case may be. Once we get to that place, it's much more challenging to let that higher brain come in. So even doing a worksheet like this is going to bring that stuff conscious, so that we can think about it using this higher brain, and then start to implement some things to mitigate that process, or to keep that lower brain in check. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the positive consequences. Let's look at the negative consequences of using. This one might be a little bit more simple, especially if you've been to treatment or if you've been trying to stop. A lot of times that's the reason that that's happened, right? And maybe it ruins your relationships, or your spouse or your loved one is telling you to get help, that it's a problem for you. Um, Maybe it's withdrawal symptoms, that constant cycle, especially if it's opiates a lot of times, right? You're using just to not feel like crap, to not have those body aches and pains, and just feel overall like all your nerves are on edge. And of course, some of those are similar for different substances like alcohol as well. Um, Maybe it's affected your health. It's maybe you've got pockmarks on your skin, or you have some heightened liver enzymes, or you've fallen on your face. You got drunk, you blacked out, you fell down, or things like that. You've lost a job. Think about all the money that you've spent on it, right? Those are fairly easy in general, but it's really important to look at what are those for you. Might be jails, the old jails, institutions, and death piece. So those negative consequences a lot of times are what brings you to treatment. So those are a lot of times pretty obvious to identify, although getting deeper into them other than just the surface level is really important. And then the positive consequences of not using. A lot of times those are a little bit easier to identify too. So when you're sober, what's good about it? So it helps you, you're able to repair relationships. Maybe you have more trust in your relationships. You're able to have more money. Maybe you have a better job, or even just have a job. You feel better physically. And again, these are some things that we've talked about with my clients. Some of these may fit for you, some of these may not. So pay attention to the ones that do fit for you. Might heal some of your health problems. Our body has this amazing ability to heal itself when we do those things that help it. So when we stop using, a lot of that stuff can heal. The brain can heal, the body can heal if we use these practices. And then of course maybe you won't feel like crap, or at least not as bad, right? Because in the beginning, sometimes you don't feel super great until things start to kick back in, and those feel good chemicals start to work better again. And the ultimate positive consequences is you're alive, right? Because for a lot of people, it is a life or death situation. And especially with things like opiates and the fentanyl epidemic that's out there, one use could equal death. So being aware of that, and knowing that if you're not dead, then we can work with that, right? If you're dead, there's not a whole lot we can do with that. So what are those things that are going to help you get to that place to understand how this is affecting your life, and what you want to be different? Because that's what it comes down to. What motivates you to stay sober? And these positive consequences are more likely to motivate you to stay sober. And you can think a little bit longer term here too. But it might be something as simple as not having to go back to treatment, right? If you've been to treatment several times, okay, it sucks, right? It's hard to work on yourself. It's hard to be in that contained environment. It's also really powerful and helpful, and there's lots of reasons to do it. But sometimes that's a motivation for some of us, is I don't want to have to do that again. I'd rather do it outpatient with a therapist, or continue to work on myself that way, or with 12-step meetings. So that can be a positive consequence. And again, this can be a giant list. We could keep going and talking about this forever. I just wanted to give you an idea so that you can maybe start to work on this yourself. So the last one is the one that's a little bit more challenging sometimes, and that's the negative consequences of not using. So what might be hard about being sober? This is the place that we really want to take a look at. If I'm sober and it felt good to be high, then maybe I need more pleasure in my life, right? So I have to figure out other ways to feel good. If I use to deal with my feelings, then I might have to learn how to deal with my feelings, my anxiety, my depression, without using substances. I might have to go to treatment to work on repairing my relationships that feel so hard because I've screwed up so much that I don't know if I can do that, right? I don't know if I can take that risk. I might have to look at my past and look at the mistakes that I've made, and that's not fun, you know? And then I can get stuck in that guilt and shame spiral, which is a whole nother topic that we'll have. It might mean you have to talk about your trauma in order to heal it, right? Not just to talk about it, because that can make it more challenging and can also create more trauma just talking about it. So doing it with the right professional at the right time with the right purpose is really important. But these are some of the barriers to recovery. This little guy right here, right? These can be some barriers to recovery. If I know that these are things that I'm challenged with, then those are the things that I'll want to take a look at if I want to be sober long term. So what do I need? What are the skills that I need? What are the things that scare me about being sober? What are the things that might get in the way of me being sober? Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. You can certainly pause it if you want to write this down. Reach out to me and I'll give you the worksheet for it as well if you'd like. But I just really want to reiterate that these tools are here for you to understand, to bring that higher brain back into functioning so that you can understand what might be getting in the way of living your best life, of doing the things that make you happy, of just feeling better overall. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight and understanding. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have more questions. Thank you so much for watching.